Noam, you're headed off on a Latin America trip right now for a month. You'll be in Brazil. You'll be giving talks in Argentina. When you go to Brazil, you're going to be meeting your new family.
Correct.
And I was wondering if you could talk a little about that.
Well, we've been talking about a variety of things that range from unpleasant to horrific, but that we shouldn't overlook the fact that the world has some wonderful things in it too. And I got a unexpected, wondrous gift from Brazil that fell into my arms not long ago. We're now about to celebrate our first anniversary and off to Brazil to meet Valeria's family.
Mm-hmm. And what is that like for you? You are seen around the world by many as not only as a person who shares incredible political insight in the world, but really as a role model. And so can you talk personally about your own life?
I'm a very private person. I've never talked about my own life much, but you know, personally, I've been very fortunate in my life. With there have been tragedies, there have been wonderful things, and Valeria's sudden appearance is one of those wonderful things.
You said after your first wife, Carol, died, that life without love is empty. Something along those lines. Can you talk about that?
Well, I could produce some cliches which have the merit of being true. Life without love is a pretty empty affair.
And your own tireless schedule, keeping up your lectures, writing extensive articles, and still tirelessly answering the emails from correspondence from people around the world. When I was in college, I remember I wrote you several times and got back these long, detailed answers on complex questions, and there's people across the globe who could attest to a similar experience. Do you feel a certain obligation to respond to people? Because nobody would fault you at the age of 86 now if you took more time for yourself.
I don't know if it's an obligation exactly. It's a privilege, really. These are the important people in the world. I remember a wonderful comment by Howard Zinn about the countless number of unknown people who are the driving force in history and in progress. And that's people like, I didn't know you, but people like you writing from college. These are people who deserve respect, encouragement, the hope for the future. They're an inspiration for me personally.
You mentioned your daughter, Avi, being an expert on Cuba, among others. You have 3 children that you and Carol raised, now broadening your family to Valeria as well. Can you talk about your philosophy of child rearing in a very politically active family? You have said in the past that you thought, because of your opposition to the war in Vietnam, for example, you might spend years in jail.
Came very close. Came close enough so that by 1967, 68, when resistance activities were at their heights, and I was an unindicted co-conspirator in one trial, and the prosecutor announced I'd be the leading person in the next trial. But
in which trial?
Pardon?
In which trial?
These were the so-called trials of the resistance. The first was called the Spock-Coffin trial, although a lot to say about that. The next ones were called off mainly because of the Tet Offensive in Vietnam, which convinced the American business community that the war's going to drag on, and they, rather significant power play, they compelled Johnson to start backing off, and one of the things they did was end the trials. But it was serious enough so that my wife Carol went back to school after 16 years to finish up with her doctoral degree, since we had 3 kids to take care of. But during those years, although I was extremely active, I mean, there were times when I was giving 7 talks a day and going to demonstrations and so on, but I always took care to spend as much time as I could, quality time with kids when they were growing up.
So what gives you hope?
Things like what you described. Also the wonderful things in the world of the kind that I mentioned, like my wife.
Professor, world-renowned linguist, dissident, author Noam Chomsky. To hear part 1 of our interview yesterday, when he talked about Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech to Congress today, you can go to our website. This is just a clip.
Basically a joint effort by Netanyahu and mostly Republican hawks in the United States to undermine any possibility of a negotiated settlement with Iran. Neither Israel nor U.S. hawks want to tolerate a deterrent in the region to their violence.
Noam Chomsky. To hear both of our hours of interview with him, go to democracynow.org. And that does it for our broadcast. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Burke, Renee Feltz, Nermeen Sheikh, Dina Guzder. I'm Amy Goodman with Aaron Mate for another edition of Democracy Now!